I am happy to welcome attendees to the second iteration of this 2020 DaVinci Institute Fall Forum. As you all are well aware, this is a much different venue than we usually have for our fall forums, which typically run from mid-morning to mid-afternoon at one of our member institution campuses. The pandemic, of course, has definitely prevented that this year. So we are well aware of everyone's Zoom fatigue that has undoubtedly crept in across the months as faculty and administrators and staff at our institutions have had to work in this new kind of environment. Therefore, instead of a single longer virtual presentation, we opted for 4 individual presentations across Monday through Thursday evenings of this week. So I want to take just a moment here to give you a preview of what's coming up tonight, and then also what our programming is for tomorrow and for Thursday. These events all begin at 7 p.m. Central Time at the same URL at which you entered to see tonight's proceedings. So this evening, we will have very fascinating information about teaching performing arts in the age of the pandemic. And I'll leave to a few minutes later the introduction of our guest speaker this evening. And then tomorrow, we'll have a focus on STEM education in the age of the pandemic. And we're very delighted to have Dr. Martha Parrott from Northeastern State University and 2 of the teacher ed students at NSU to give the first part of the programming tomorrow, which is on the broad topic of teaching in the sciences in this new form of teaching learning enterprise. And then that will be followed by Dr. Jeanette Lauch from University of Science and Arts, Oklahoma, who will share some of her technological solutions for working as a biology instructor. And you know, I apologize, I switched our 2 first segments because Dr. Parrott will be on Thursday night with liberal arts and education. And my apologies, it is from Oklahoma State University tomorrow that we will have Dr. Donald French. And Dr. French is a STEM instructor in the biological sciences who has had to figure out how to pivot from teaching 1,000 student class with 40 TAs to a different way to approach that in this age that we're dealing in now. So then Thursday night is our focus on the liberal arts and education with Dr. Parrott and her teacher ed students, and that will be followed by Dr. Thomas Horn from Oklahoma City Community College, who will share some technological solutions regarding teaching composition at distance. And then we have a trifecta on Thursday night because following Dr. Horn will be Dr. Carrie Schneider from Cameron University here in Oklahoma, who will speak to distance education in the liberal arts as well. So that's just a preview of what's coming up, and you can see on your screen our layout of topics across the 4 evenings. So that said, to prepare you for what we hope you will want to join us for in coming evenings, it's my pleasure to share a little bit about 2 of our board members who have worked to arrange this presentation this evening, who, because of the ice storm and power outages, are unfortunately in places where they have no power and no internet access. But I did want to honor them and let everyone know that they worked in the setup of this evening's presentation. And one of those is Audrey Schmitz from Northern Oklahoma College, and she's the director there of the Eleanor Hayes Art Gallery, where she instructs three-dimensional arts and art history. But she also maintains a professional art career specializing in ceramics, sculpture, fused glass, and fine arts photography. She holds the title also of being a DaVinci Fellow. And we at DaVinci are very proud of being able to award fellowships and scholarships every year. And Audrey was one of our past fellows. And then the person who knows our presenter this evening in person is Dr. Tracy Gregg Boothby at Rose State College here, where she conducts the Rose State Chorus, Rose State Chamber Singers, and serves as music director for musical theater productions, as well as teaching voice there and other undergraduate courses in music. She also serves as the music associate at Westminster Presbyterian Church in Oklahoma City, as the director of children's music. And very fascinatingly, her area of research is the collection, transcription, and facilitation of choral arrangements of Wichita tribal songs in order to promote preservation of the Wichita musical culture, something that's extremely important, not just here in Oklahoma, but for the history of the United States. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce Elise Rowe, who is at Redlands Community College here in El Reno, Oklahoma. She is a public speaking and composition professor there, and has a Bachelor of Science in English Education, a Master's of Humanity and Literature, as well as a Master of Fine Arts in Competitive Public Speaking. So it's my delight to turn things over to Elise now to introduce our evening speaker.
Thank you, Dr. King. And it's my pleasure to introduce tonight Dr. Carrie Earnhardt. Dr. Carrie Earnhardt serves as the Director of Choral Activities at California State University, Fresno, where she conducts the concert choir, chamber singers, Masterworks chorus, and teaches undergraduate and graduate conducting. Dr. Earnhardt combines careers as conductor, teacher, and singer. An accomplished vocalist, Dr. Earnhardt has appeared as a guest artist with numerous university, professional, community, and church choirs throughout the country and abroad. She began her professional singing career in New York City and has performed professionally as a soloist in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Earnhardt.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction. I told Tracy, just say, hey, this is my friend, and she's here. So I'm delighted to be with you all this evening. So I appreciate the nice warm welcome in spite of the nice cold weather that you're having. I told Jeff that I was cold this morning because it was 62 degrees in my house because we had a little snap last night. So my hearts are with you, but I have obviously acclimated to my California surroundings and no longer feel that Texas and Oklahoma cold that happens snaps in October. So I am from the area there. I grew up in Texas and Oklahoma and recently moved to California about 4.5 years ago. When Tracy first asked me to speak with you this evening, one of the main ideas that she wanted me to kind of just talk to you about is what is it like teaching online? My understanding is most of you are either in person or you're doing some hybrid education with your students. And it's certainly a challenge, or has been a challenge from time to time in these last few weeks, to adjust and adapt to this online virtual world in the performing arts. As Elise said, I have 3 choral ensembles, and I teach conducting, beginning conducting, and advanced conducting, and then I have one-on-one conducting sessions with my graduate students. So we've all had to kind of pivot, and we've continued to do that over the last several weeks. Some things work and some things do not. One of the things that they asked was, how do I run a rehearsal? So I think I'm going to start there. And so I'm actually going to put a little thing in the chat, and we don't have many attendees. So, if you have the ability to go to menti.com and type in that code. Thank you, Mark. This is one way that I start my rehearsals. One of the things that are important, I think, to us in the arts is the sense of community that we build with our students and that they build with one another. And so being online, you certainly lose a little bit of that connection. So I have really worked hard to try and maintain some sense of community, especially with my new students that have come in. So I'm going to screen share here and we'll see. So hopefully this is what you saw when you clicked on this. This is Mentimeter. If you are not familiar with it, become familiar with it. I think it's even a great tool, for lots of different things. So if I hit the S button, there we go. So as I started my semester with this photograph and this question, how do they feel about this semester? And explained to my students that our goal is to get to the mountaintop, but we're going to have a little bit of rugged terrain perhaps as we work towards that goal. But I also reminded them that the growth is in the valleys, right? It's on our way up that we see that growth, and use this image. And then they can all, as they all add in their answers, then they can see what their classmates are feeling and thinking. And I found that this is a great way for them to kind of identify with one another and realize I'm not so alone in this virtual world where they feel obviously very alone. This is another question that I asked for my students. What are their goals for the semester? And let's see if I hide that image there. Earn an A. So yeah, there you go. So as you add in your answers, it creates a word puzzle. And the ideas that are most frequently used by your students, right, are going to be the largest things. I ask them questions like, what does choir mean to you? I just ask them random questions. Sorry, excuse me, I meant to have this. I've been using a book called 4,000 Questions for getting to know anyone and everyone. And it has everything from the silliest of questions, like what kind of superhero do you think you are, to more serious questions. And so I use these Mentimeters to start class as a way to get the students to interact with me and to interact with one another. And have found it to be really positive. So there is no way, as you know, for us to actually sing on Zoom. So what I typically do is I have a student volunteer that they help me, they do stretches and exercises, get the body moving, get the kids up and moving because they've been sitting at a computer all day, perhaps by the time that they get to my class. And then I take them through warm-ups where I have them, they're all muted, and I'm just play through warm-ups and keep my eye on the Zoom, right? And I interact with them while they're doing that. And because if you happen to be a choral conductor, then you know that we know by the shape of the vowel that they're singing with. Maybe that is or is not correct. So I stay constantly interacting with them through that process, just like I would as if I were sitting at the piano in the concert hall during a regular rehearsal. So I found that that's really important. and to keep this consistency. So we start our rehearsals the exact same way. We've had to develop different means, right, for them to learn literature. But this also has presented opportunities for us to dig into different aspects of the literature, gives us more time that maybe we don't normally have in a rehearsal because we're rushing to a concert date or a festival date. So we spend a lot of time talking about text and the music anyways, but in this setting, we've been able to do it a little bit more. I've been able to give them examples asynchronously where I give them text and then they come up with some sort of artistic response. And it can be, they can write a song about it, they can write a poem about it, they can write a short story about it, they can take a photograph and have that as an explanation. They can use a piece of art that already exists in the world as a way of connecting to the music. So that's kind of been a new thing for me. While we normally would sit in a rehearsal and interact with one another, and how do you feel, and what does this make you think of? And we have done some of that on Zoom. This lets them personalize it a little bit, and it lets them do it in a way that they feel most comfortable. Not every kid feels comfortable expressing vocally how they feel about something, but maybe they can take a photograph or use a pre-existing photograph or piece of art or draw something or write a poem to express themselves. And so that way we're also drawing in the other art forms. And so I found that to be a really kind of fun exercise that we've been able to do with some of our pieces of music. Typically in a rehearsal, what I will do is I have, I've made rehearsal tracks for them that they can practice with. And then what I've done then is I've taken the main track with all their parts, and then I've made a video, preparing them for the virtual video that they will eventually make of me conducting. And first I started out just having the music there for them to practice with. And then I thought, well, that's not working so well. We were submitting recordings and they weren't quite together. So how would it change if I actually conducted it for them? And it changed it drastically. And one main thing that came out of that were the students' response was, I felt like I was with you, right? You were smiling at me just like you would if I were standing in front of you. So I pivoted all of our repertoire and recorded videos for all of them so that they can practice with me at home. You know, they just click the button and I appear and here we go. And it has worked really well for us. We are preparing kind of a hodgepodge of, for a concert. Normally we would do 2 or 3 concerts in a semester, but that's not really possible in this world that we're currently living in because it takes 5 times longer to do anything, as you may have found out already. And so each choir has been paired, their repertoire has been pared down, and then we're putting them all together for one big virtual concert that will then be I will introduce certain pieces. I will have students that will introduce certain pieces, and then the choir will appear. We will actually be starting a hybrid model in 1 week. So I will have 23 of my 120 singers that will get to be with me on campus, socially distanced in masks outside, because we have that luxury here in California this time of year. And so our goal with that ensemble is to actually try to make a live, make an actual recording of that group to add into that virtual recording. So the concert itself will also be a bit hybrid in that regard. In respects to my conducting classes, it has also a bit of a challenge because I'm working with new conductors that have never, hit a downbeat before, perhaps. So I have really tried to structure my online learning system, which we use Canvas. I'm not sure, some of you probably use Canvas, some use Blackboard. I've really tried to structure that online learning environment for them in a very sequential order so that it's easy to find everything. And I've done that also with my choirs, I guess. But for the young conductors, each module is, of course, on a topic, but then I have made little 30-second videos so that they can, again, practice a skill with me, where I will just say, all right, it's conducting with Dr. Earnhardt time again. And today we're going to talk about the crescendo decrescendo. And I'll show them that gesture a few times, or different ways they could do that gesture in a short video that they can go and refer back to. I have been meeting all of my classes synchronously. So we're getting lecture time in class, and I'm able to work with them a little bit one-on-one in a breakout room session or in small groups, breakout session groups. But that still doesn't change the fact that they go, 2 days later, they're going, okay, now what was it that she did? So I found that creating these short little videos have been very helpful because they can watch them as many times as they want. I record our class sessions that they can refer back to, but most of them are not going to do that because it's an hour long. But if it's a 1-minute video, they'll click that 15 times to practice with me. So using some things like that have really been helpful for us in moving forward and growing these young conductors. We have also been, like I said, I put them in breakout rooms, and we've been doing some group work where they'll take a piece of music and as a group make some musical decisions and have musical discussions within their small groups. And then they've been given recordings, which any musician that's listening knows that's not ideal, but it is a way for us to still move forward at this time. So my accompanist has created recordings that they can work with. I've also made it available that they can find a recording of the same piece online if maybe they feel more comfortable using that, which has worked out well, and some students definitely choose to do that. But we break into these small groups and they pair off and they just drill with one another right there on Zoom. And I give them so many okay, today we're going to do, I want you to all go into your breakout rooms and, find your conducting buddy, and you're going to do, 6 measures in a row, and you're going to do 2 measures of 4, 2 measures of 3, and 2 measures of 2, and you're going to do those all legato. All right, then you're going to flip that and you're going to do them all staccato, and you're going to do those for each other and help one another. Because it not being in the classroom, I can't walk around to each individual student and tweak how their hands are or their bodies are necessarily. So the students have really enjoyed this. They've really enjoyed working with one another. And what I have found is that I always use a masterclass setting to present their performances of a piece. And typically their colleagues play for them or sing for them, right? So that's not possible at this moment, but I'm getting more interaction from the group for their responses to their colleagues. I have set community norms in all of my classes, which I think are really important, not only in the synchronous sessions that we have, but also in any online interactions we may have, discussion boards and that sort of thing. Just to make sure everyone's on the same page and knows what the expectations are just as if we were in the classroom together. And so one of our community norms for conducting class is we always do everything we say is positive. So I am going to compliment you on something that you did well. And then I'm going to encourage you about something I would love to see you improve upon. And we keep everything in that positive light, and the students have been really responsive. They're really growing just as much, if not in some ways more than my students typically grow in a fall semester. And that's been really exciting to see. I have an excellent batch of students that have just come with open minds and open hearts, and they're ready and willing to just, okay, we're just going to try this. And I've made it clear from the beginning in all my classes, nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be normal. And there will be some things that don't work. And there will be some things that work beautifully. And so I try to check in with those classes pretty regularly. Whenever we've changed something or added something new in, how was this for you? How is this going for you? Is it working? And the students have been, very honest, and they've been kind in their honesty, which is nice. And saying, Dr. E, this was really helpful, or, okay, I'm still not getting this. So, something's not, translating well. And that tells me I need to go and regroup. And I've asked them, well, what would be helpful? What would be helpful in this situation? What could you use as a tool to support you through this? And again, they've been open and honest and shared with me their thoughts. I try to have that environment in my classroom. I think most artists do, where our students do feel more comfortable speaking with us, which is fantastic. But they're not going to tell us if we don't ask them. That's the one thing I do know. So I try to do check-ins with them pretty frequently if we're changing something up. I'm trying to think what else. In my conducting lessons are working pretty much like my conducting class, in the sense that, it's just one-on-one with my grad students, but they're conducting with recordings that they're choosing, and we're discussing the literature and marking their scores just like we would if we were in the classroom together. And I have found that I have to put myself on mute, so that we get a better connection and everything kind of stays together better. We don't have things the music doesn't kind of blip in and out, I guess I should say. And we're able to work very similarly. The only difference for us in that setting is we don't have a live accompanist, right? So they don't get to manipulate the music as much as they would like to at times, but we're still growing. That's the thing, is they're still learning the different tactics of conducting and accomplishing their goals. I see that there's a question, did I change any of my course learning objectives? I did not, actually. That's a great question. That is not something that I did. And part of that, I think, is how my course learning objectives were already set up, so that we're building ensemble practices, we're working with one another, we're improving our musicianship skills, and, learning the literature and things like that. So I'm still trying to give them even though our literature is cut way down, like my choirs normally would learn maybe 15 pieces each in a semester. They're learning 4 or 5 just because of how difficult it is to put things together. But we're still, in some ways, we're getting to talk about the literature on a deeper level. We're still doing musicianship things. I've been using Sight Reading Factory, which, some college professors might say, well, that's a little juvenile. Sight Reading Factory is more for middle school and high school, but it can be kind of tricky. And I have found that it's really helping my kids brush up on their sight reading skills and their rhythmic skills, which are really important things for us to be doing, right? And again, we normally, with our sight reading, it's through the pieces that we're learning in, the repertoire that we're learning in class. And there are kids that sneak past you, right? Because they're relying on their neighbor. That's helping, that they've got a really good ear. And so they're getting past you. This allows me to hear them one-on-one. And it takes time. I set it up so that we do things as a group together in class. And I'll have maybe one person unmute and sing, and everybody else sings on mute, but they have one person singing it with them. So, one of my more confident singers that wants to show off their reading skills and things like that. But then I have an assignment due every week and a half that they have to do on their own. And with Sight Reading Factory, you can set the parameters, what levels they're singing at. Some of them are quite tricky. You can put solfege in, you can put numbers in, you can have nothing there. You can tell it what keys you want, what time signatures you want. You can set the tempo. You can set all the parameters as the teacher. And so I've built that up as we've moved along through the semester, and it allows me one-on-one to hear them. And then I can give them feedback right there in the app where it's like, oh, Jeff, wow, you're doing a really great job. You got off on measure 4, you're missing this interval right here, but you found do again in measure 6. So excellent work, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to find that home base again. So I can watch their progress, and I can comment right there with them. I guess I actually should backtrack a little bit. We are turning in audio recordings before we turn in video recordings. And this gives us a chance. I can do, we're going to record these 2 pages, or we're going to record the whole piece, whatever. And then I can give them individual feedback. Again, something that we don't have the luxury of doing. And my instrumental colleagues are doing this as well. We get those one-on-one, it's one-on-one time. And I can say, wow, your voice has really grown. That is just beautiful. I'm so excited. It's so exciting to hear this, but your rhythm sucks. You need to fix this in measure 15, or you need to do this. And so that is allowing my students to get one-on-one time with me that they normally wouldn't get in a 60 voice ensemble, or even a 30 voice ensemble, right? And so we do these little mini recordings, and I have learned great technology like Logic Pro and things like that. And I've figured out how to line up recordings, and I will line up the recordings, and then I will play them for the students and say, okay, first listen, just what does it feel like to hear everyone singing together? And they're like, oh, it's so cool to hear each other, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll say, okay, we're going to listen one more time, and I want you to listen with a more critical ear. What do you hear? Oh, well, I hear that, I tend to use, you can tell I'm from Texas and Oklahoma because I tend to use the word fracking, like, oh, you're fracking that entrance right there. So what do we need to do? Oh, well, that means we need to make sure we're breathing in the shape of the vowel that we're about to sing, and just reversing the flow of air so that we're all coming in with a nice clean onset. So we're getting to talk about those sorts of things. And we do talk about that in the rehearsal setting, but they're not listening with the same critical ear in a rehearsal setting that they are able to listen to with these raw recordings. And they are raw, right? And we've talked about the fact that, this is a one-dimensional world that we're living in right now. They're just singing into a phone or a computer. And they're used to a 3-dimensional world, right? The sound bounces between them and around the room, and it has life, right? And it takes up space, and they're not used to hearing it like this. So sometimes it's a little, it hurts just a little bit to hear some of it, but it's also helping us grow, right? Because they're learning to listen with more critical ears. They're learning how to use their voices differently, because we're getting to talk. We talk about vocal pedagogy all the time in a choral rehearsal. We talk about diction all the time in a choral rehearsal, but we're getting to do some specific little tweaks here and there that maybe we don't always have time for. Let's see. So can I speak more about community norms? Have I found these norms have encouraged more student interaction? Yes. Okay, so I set some community norms for us, right, that were part of my syllabus at the beginning of the semester. These are the expectations in class, especially like Zoom norms, basically. I expect you to have your camera on as much as possible because I want to see you so that we can interact, and I can make sure you're not doing homework for another class or off in the kitchen having breakfast and just listening from afar. So we have some Zoom norms like that. that active participation is still, expected, even though we're in a screen. So I had set up some of those. Then what I did is I went back and I went to the class, and I'll use my conducting class as an example. Before we did our first group project, I said, okay, let's set up some community norms for this project. How do we want this to look? Well, we want everybody to participate. We want everyone to give positive feedback. We want to make sure that, everyone respects each other's time. So if we set outside class times, that everyone shows up on time and that they're there. And so they came up with, I think, 5 community norms that they felt comfortable with in the group setting. And for each of my conducting lessons, once they, perform in class and do their video and we give them feedback, and as a class, I'm also giving them feedback individually in their grade book in Canvas, right? Because there's a spot in Canvas that you can give direct feedback. Then each student is also required to do a self-reflection. And this is something I've always done. They have to go back and watch the video of their conducting and take in some of the comments that their colleagues or I maybe gave to them, good and things that, things they did really well and things they need to improve upon. And then they need to do a self-assessment of themselves. And I make them do this for every project because I want them to actually be looking at themselves. So for our group projects, I add in questions that they have to address regarding what was it like to work with the group? Did everyone participate? That are basically going back to those community norms. And because it's just with me, the students have been honest. We've had really good success. I had one student say, this isn't the right group for me. I did not get along well with these people. Is it possible for future group assignments that we maybe shuffle things around? That's fine, right? Because not all personalities are gonna work. And this student was, a little frustrated, but it also, with one particular student, but it also allowed me to go to that particular student and address that with them one-on-one in a way that they needed to know, hey, when we're working with others, we need to remember X, Y, and Z. And, let me refer you back to what our community norms are. And there you go. So that's worked pretty well. How do I, the volume of grading. Yes, it is a little crazy, Martha, for sure. So, I try to space out the assignments the best that I can. That's the first thing that I do. I found things like Sight Reading Factory, instead of giving them 3 or 4 examples for every assignment, maybe I give them 2 examples for every assignment. And I'm a bit of an insomniac, so I'm up every morning at 3:30 or 4 anyway. So that's what I do while I drink my coffee is I listen to new sight reading examples every morning as kids turn them in. I tell my kids that they will get information back from me within a week. I try to give myself a little lead time. There have been a couple of instances that I have not been able to do that, but I just told them. It's going to take me longer to do this. When they turn in their recordings that we're doing as we're building up, those are probably the ones that take the longest, but I try to do it so that not all 3 of my ensembles are turning them in at the same time. And that I'm not turning all of them in on a Friday night or a Saturday night so that I'm not spending my whole weekend doing it. But I'm just having to schedule in grading time. And if you're like me, you've never done that before because we do our assessments right there in class, octet exams, quartet exams, things like that. So that has been a bit of a challenge for me, but I'm just scheduling in time and setting that time aside. One of the trickiest things is that you have students that are falling by the wayside because they're frustrated. There's a lot of depression with our students right now because the world is not functioning the way they need it to function, want it to function. And so I'm trying to be compassionate and be understanding as much as possible. But, you know, I had students that they had an assignment due last night. So what I did this morning is I went through and I just eyeballed and went, okay, I don't have this recording from these students. And I set up like a generic reminder email, and I send it individually, you know, dear Tom, just a gentle reminder that this was due last night. Please reach out to me if you're having any issues. But you know, you need to get this in. And students have been good about going, oh crap, I just forgot to turn that in. Or, you know, Dr. E, I just need an extra day or two. And if they just need an extra day or two, you know, we've had a lot of, you may have seen, we've had really bad wildfires. We have one of the worst in the history of California right here in Fresno County. And so our air quality has been horrible at times over the last couple of months. And so, you know, I have to take that into account. Depending on where a student lives here in the Valley, their air quality might be 200 that day, which is horrible. So yeah, no, I understand why they're not turning in a recording. I just ask that they communicate with me, you know, and keep in contact with me. I'm willing to work with them, but within reason. And I remind them, you know, and I've also given them class time to do some of these assignments, trying not to overburden them too, because what I am understanding from my students doing these check-ins, like with Mentimeter, and just having some open discussions with them, is that some of their professors are like, oh, look, you're fully asynchronous. And so they're teaching themselves everything is what they feel like. And they feel really overwhelmed. So I don't want to be that person that overwhelms them, but we still have goals and things that we have to accomplish over the semester. So it's about trying to find a balance, and it's about also trying to support them the best that I can. I've added things to my Canvas page. I don't know if y'all want to see, but I'll show you, okay? I have added things to my Canvas page that I will continue to add from now on because it has been helpful. But this one right here, resources, and here's their class contact. So if they click on that, that is my contact information. That is all of their, any of their section leaders, their contact information right there. Campus resources, so everything, you know, like tutoring services and all of that. So all of these things, what they do is they just click on it and it opens it up, and here's, you know, the writing center, counseling center, learning center, you know, online tutoring chat, all of these things. And all they do is they just click that hyperlink and they can go right there to that website. And I've found that has been helpful, and students are using it, which has been great. Many of them have thanked me for that, and thanked me for the time that my rehearsals are 2 hours long for my large ensemble on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I never keep them the full 2 hours. And I try to do something one of the days for the last 15 minutes that is some sort of either a community building activity where I send them to do some funky like scavenger hunt, you know, and here's your list, and everybody has to come back, you know, somebody has to have a hairbrush and somebody has to have 2 different kinds of spoons, and, you know, funny things like that, but just so that they're working as a team and chatting with one another. Sometimes I'll send them into breakout rooms just to chat and let them interact with one another, and I have them do it with random people in the class. Now with Zoom, they can jump chat rooms, which is kind of cool too. They can move around with the new Zoom things. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought and I apologize. It just zoomed right out the window. So now I don't know what I was saying, and I looked at the chat, so I apologize. I'll think of it. It'll come back to me. Oh, I know what it was. And I've done things where I'll have little discussions with them. I'll talk to them about campus resources one day, or one day we talked about growth mindset. And I played them a little 3 or 4 minute video about growth mindset. And then we discussed the difference between growth and fixed mindset, And how does that apply to music, right? How does that apply to our choral ensemble? How does that apply to learning in general right now in this virtual setting? And within 5 minutes of dismissing the class, I had 4 emails from students that said this was exactly what I needed today. I did really badly on an exam this morning, and I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I killing myself to do this? And talking about growth mindset was exactly what I needed. And it became a great class discussion that actually veered off into students saying, oh, use the writing center. I've used the writing center because I'm not a great writer. And man, the tutors there are excellent. Or I've used this, da 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 da. And so what we did is then I set up a discussion board, and the students started putting in different things that they use, different study tactics that they use. And they were sharing them. And for my new students, my young freshmen, that this is their first semester in college, I think it was really helpful for them, you know. And when those seniors are saying, oh, well, I have a planner and I live by this planner and I do this and this and this. So I try to have these discussions, you know, like I said, for like the last 15 minutes of one of the classes once a week. And I try to come up with some little topic to get them interacting and thinking about things, and to try to keep them going and moving forward. We're always their cheerleader, right? When we're in person. But I feel like that is a lot of what I do right now, is I am trying to be their cheerleader and just, you know, yes, you can do this. You can make it through this. This is a blip. In the grand scheme of your life, this is just a little blip, you know. And I've had the discussion with them. You have the potential to be the next greatest generation. You know, it's how you're going to handle this, that, you know, how we come out of this, a lot of it's going to be up to you. So, yeah, so I try to talk to them about that. Let's see. Is anything from what you are doing now that you will translate into return to normal? Yes, there are, I mean, certainly how I have learned to reorganize my online world with the kids has been super helpful. When I first started the semester, I had like, you know, all the songs were here and all of this. Well, then I was like, okay, that was making me crazy as we added more rep and things. So I started reorganizing modules for them. And the kids' feedback were, oh my gosh, Dr. E, that was so much better. Yes, I can find anything I need now. So that I try to do everything to make it easy for them to find the answer. So things like that, how I've got the online world organized, because I always use Canvas as, you know, as a resource. I've just never had to use it to this extent before. Doing things like keeping the online resources. I will probably continue to do things with Sight Reading Factory, because I'm finding that it's beneficial, and they're learning and they're improving. And students that were struggling the first couple of weeks of school are now just, you know, I had one student, because you have to set how many times they can redo a thing, and every time they click it, it's slightly different, but it's within kind of similar to the one they didn't do well on. I had one student that did it 32 times, and I thought, oh my gosh, they sight read 32 times. And then I sat there for a minute and went, they just sight read 32 times, right? So yay, small victories for sight reading. But so now I've changed the parameters a little bit. But some of those kids that were doing, you know, 25 or 30 times are now doing 7 times, because their confidence is building and they're learning the process a little bit better. So there are some things like that yes, I will continue using. We just starting to use a software called Soundation, which is similar to Soundtrap, if you're familiar with that. And it is it's like a recording studio, and you can actually go in and collaborate. So all my tenors could go into a breakout room and practice, and then individually lay down and watch each other lay down tracks, and then play it right there in real time, what they just did. I'm finding that some of these tools, I think, will be helpful for us. And as I explained to my students, education will no longer be what it was before COVID. It's changed forever. And while we will get it back to as normal and normal looking as possible, I think when we do return to everyone does return to the classroom and we kind of get going, there's still things with technology that that's, these tools are there now. And so we'll be using them, I think. And so there will be certainly some of these technology tools that I've incorporated. The amount of feedback and stuff that I'm able to give students is also, I think, been really helpful. So I will try to figure out ways to incorporate that even more once we're back. You've become more flexible during COVID while sustaining high. Yes. Yes, Martha, we're all doing this. Yeah. And we do have to be their cheerleaders. And I think in the arts in particular, we're the people they cry in your office, right? They don't go cry in every professor's office, but they come and cry in a music professor's office, or, because they feel close to us because they're sharing with us. Any sort of artist, they're sharing with us in a different way. And so, we have to be encouraging. And if we're not there for them, who's going to be, is kind of what I'm afraid of at this moment. And we certainly don't want to lose them. We don't want them. My goal is to keep my kids in school. That's my goal right now. I want to keep them in school, and I want to keep them, progressing and moving forward, for sure. I guess, sorry, I've just kept talking because, your great questions that are coming up. I hope this has been all right. Are there other questions, or do you want me to talk about any other technologies that we've been using?
One thing that might pull a lot of things together would be regarding the question that just came up a minute ago about the things that you will keep doing, even if there is the so-called return to normalcy, whether it's the fall of 2021 or even later than that. As an instructor in the performing arts, I'm wondering if you have had conversations with other of the music faculty or musical theater faculty or others where it's a faculty to faculty brainstorm session, because certainly, a choral conductor as well as an orchestra conductor or a band conductor are facing these similar challenges about groups of humans performing together, being taught to do that. So just curious if there's something that you're hearing that is at least conceptually a common practice that performing arts instructors are taking.
Well, I think, some of the tools that we're using, like with the submitting recordings and things like that, I think that those are things that will stay for us. I have, unfortunately, because we're not on campus, I see my faculty, once a month. And so, but I do know that I have had conversations with my instrumental colleagues that they are, they're using the similar tools like I am and submitting recordings where like I said, we just got Soundation. We're all using Sight Reading Factory. My instrument, we all have smart music, but it's more geared towards instrumental music. So they're enjoying that a little bit more than I am. So I haven't delved too deeply into that one yet because I've been working with these others. We're all using Flipgrid. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, you should become familiar with Flipgrid, and it does integrate into these learning management systems. And are you familiar with Flipgrid? So Flipgrid is a cool little thing that you can create these short little videos. So I started using it last spring when we first went out, as fun little videos to reach out to my students. And so I was like, how are you surviving, COVID-19? And I would sit there and I'd be like, don't worry about me, guys. I've got my roll of toilet paper and I've got my bottle of water. And, I have my little, like, I have little wind up things, and my kids give me toys all the time. So I had some of them in my surroundings. You can probably see, like, I have a unicorn behind me, a stuffed unicorn. And like, don't worry about me. And so, and then I sent it out to our classroom, and they all responded. And well, this is what I'm doing, Dr. E. And, you know, I'm hunkered down with my family, and we're doing this and that. And so I've used Flipgrid as a community building tool and a way of interacting and allowing the students to interact, and they can see each other's videos, right? You can set it up so they can see each other. They can make comments. They can put little emojis on it. You know, they love emojis, and all of these things that are interactive, and they have some fun with that. But you can also use it for virtual. You can translate them into virtual choirs or virtual instrumental ensembles. They can use those. Flipgrid changed their parameters this summer to allow up to 10 minutes of video, which is fantastic. And you can use those for assessments also, and it's quick because you can make comments right there and it goes right back to them. If it's maybe not something you're grading, and so you're not having, you know, maybe you don't want to go back and forth between a couple of things, but you just want to give them some feedback. Okay, everybody, we're gonna, you know, this is a difficult passage, so everybody's going to do a video recording of, you know, measures 23 through 42 and send it to me on Flipgrid. Go. And they could actually do it during class. It works with iOS and Android, which is great. And you can use it online as well. So if they don't have, you know, their phone or they need to be playing, they want to play their music with their phone, they can record it online, you know, however they want to do it. So some of those things I think will also stick around, because now we're creating a new environment here with our students and how we're interacting with them. And while yes, we'll go back to some sense of normalcy where we're interacting with the group as a whole, I think we're finding also that it has been positive to be able to have this individual connect with our students. And when you're standing in front of an ensemble of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus people, they don't always get that. And so I might not do it as much as I'm doing it right now out of self-preservation. I don't know that I'll do it, you know, every week I have new recordings turning in, or every 2 weeks, but it will be a way, maybe that'll be how I'll do midterm exams or something, or have them do something along those lines. So there are some of those technologies that I think are helpful. I was going to look, let's see, I think I'm out of time. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I'm like, I don't even know. I was gonna look real quick and show you. I had actually made a PowerPoint about some of the technologies. Just gonna look, and I'll share this if you would like. This I can share. I guess I can share it with you right now. But you can go to this and you can like click on it, and there's hyperlinks, and there's a little video about Mentimeter. Jamboard, if you haven't used that, it's basically online sticky notes, and they already have templates in place, which is kind of cool, and it works with Google if you're a Google person. Padlet is a cool little sticky note thing. Of course, Google Forms. I use those to submit recordings if they're doing them in something else. Soundtrap, Soundation, Acapella app, of course, but the drawback is it's only 9 people and it's only for iOS right now. The Flipgrid, Sight Reading Factory, Go React. This is a cool thing. So you can use it for any of the arts. You could use it for public speaking, or, you know, theater or conducting or whatever. It is a video site where the coolest part about it is that, let's say Jeff is singing a song for me. I don't know if Jeff's a singer or not, but Jeff is singing a song for me, and he's singing along, and he just destroyed like measures 9 and 10. I can hit the space bar and I can say, "Dear Jeff, you're doing so well, but right here at measure 9 and 10, you're missing this note, this note, and this note, or this rhythm. And then I hit the space bar again and it keeps going. And then I can hit it again and I can say, you know, or if it's a conducting student, oh, your hands are too high right here. Click it again, it keeps playing. I can click the bar again. I can add a little thing. You can add video responses for them, all kinds of stuff. And so then when the student goes back and watches their video, when it gets to measure 9 and 10, I'm gonna pop up on the screen, and I've either talked to him, written him a note, or maybe sung it for him the way I want him to sing it as an example right then, and then it just keeps going. And then it'll stop again whenever I've made it. Now the problem is it's kind of expensive. I don't know exactly how expensive, but it does definitely cost money. We're also using NoteFlight. There is a free version online, but we're using, of course, the one that costs a little bit money. It's a little bit of money. It's a notation software. Loom and Screencastify. If you want to create recordings for your kids, you can make it so that you're in a little, kind of like Zoom, but it's a little fancier, I think, than a Zoom recording. It'll put you in the box and you can talk to them and talk them through the PowerPoint presentation or whatever you would like. So those are some of the other kind of tools that we've been using, but I guess, and I can grab that, actually. I'll grab it and I can throw it in the chat. And you can, I don't care, you can look at it, burn it, anything you want. Ask me questions, it doesn't matter. So I'll throw that in there if you would like to look at that. And it has, like I said, it has hyperlinks to a lot of those softwares and things in there. I don't know, have I answered your questions? Do you have more questions? I'm happy to help, whatever you need.
Thank you. That is extremely helpful. Thanks for posting that. I know that there are many of us that are interested always in trying to find a combination of two things. One is technology that makes our lives as faculty easier, but then two, technology that works easily. And it seems like many of these tools that you've talked about are really, really good for faculty to know about in this day and time.
Well, I hope so. And I'll fix the access for you, Mark. And I threw my email address in there. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions if I can, or help direct you to maybe one of my colleagues that might be able to better answer that question. So, all right.
Super. Well, we really, really thank you. This has been very, very engaging and illuminating, especially in terms of both the pedagogy / andragogy of functioning in this new environment, as well as just a plethora of cool tools, no matter what the discipline. So thank you for sharing all of this. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you on behalf of the DaVinci Institute to everyone. Please remember, we are only in episode 2 of our 4-episode mini-series. So we hope to see some of you or all of you back tomorrow night, and then possibly Thursday as well. And with that, we bid you a fond good evening.